We are here for another one of your questions about work. And we try to make the questions here both generally applicable and specific to the moment. And so for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Karyn Scott, who Karyn has had a whole career in the tech sector, big companies, startups. Now she does what we call a fractional CMO, which means that she is a CMO who works with multiple companies at a time. And she also has, and we'll talk more a bit about this, I hope, a side hustle making olive oil, growing olives and making olive oil. So definitely want to hear more about that. And so Karyn, the question we have today, and I know it probably has come up for you largely in a marketing context, and I think it can be valuable there and as a parable for kind of all contexts, is I've got goals. My team's got to hit the goals. I'm responsible for it, either as an individual or as a manager or whatever. And then the budget gets cut. And so what do I do? And thank you for any and all insight.
Yeah, well, thank you first and foremost for inviting me to participate in this discussion. To your earlier point, it's sadly a very timely topic right now because companies they've either just finished their next year fiscal planning or in the midst of it. And given what's going on geopolitically and socioeconomically and whatever else, companies are having budget cuts, right? Sure. In fact, in the second half of 2023, 68% of companies had budget cuts anywhere from 5 to 10% plus. So it's a real thing. So
no surprise. That makes total sense.
No surprise. The funny thing is, marketing is always asked to do more with less. So it's not news for us. But particularly now, I think there are a couple things one can do to lean into, wow, I got to make my goals and I have less to go do with. The first thing I always keep in mind is, keep calm and market on, right? So the reality is, as a leader, as a CMO or any head of function or even the CEO of a company, when the ball drops or the brick lands for a budget cut, which often includes staff as well, the most important thing for the first few days is let people mourn. Let people process.
I love that. I love the use of that word in that context. It's sort of like, it's okay to be like, hey, we don't have to roll right this second. But sorry, keep going. That's just great.
No, that's true because the situations that fail, at least in my experience, are where the instant reaction is, all right, let's rally the troops. We can do this. Let's get together. And actually, no, you have to mourn the loss. There are going to be humans that are no longer there that you work with, your work family. There's going to be programs that you were running and proud of that are no longer there for the greater good of the business or whatever's going on. So I think it's really important for leaders and even individual contributors to take the time to mourn, process it, take the day off, gather as a group, I always had open office hours, come and let it all out, nothing recorded, whatever you want to talk about, cry, scream, yell. So that's number one, is really just let people process. And then after some amount of time, whether it's a couple of days or whatever the right thing is for your culture, and we're all gauges of our own culture, then start to rethink, okay, great. I still have to move forward now. So what do I do? First thing that I always like to do is, especially from a marketing standpoint, what's the one goal that's most important to the board, to your CEO, to the investment community? What's the one goal? Marketers have a billion different goals, or at least 5 or 6, right? You got to get net new customers. You got to extend existing install base. You've got to mitigate churn. You've got to whatever. What's the one thing that's really going to move the needle? So from my experience in the tech world, I'll give you an example. When I was I won't use any company names, obviously, but I was at a not yet public startup that was seeking to do an IPO. And the number one thing back at that time that the investors cared about is net new logos, net new logos, net new logos. Mm-hmm. To them, as you know, from your role, biggest predictor of future success. One could debate that, but nevertheless, it's a big one. So if that's the goal, and that was the goal in this company, what I said is anything not related to bringing in a net new logo, we're going to drop. Yes, it's still important. Yes, we all have burning platforms around this, but that's not the one thing that's going to move the needle. So let's put all the eggs into that basket. And
it's interesting as you say that, just to say for a second, what you're implying is don't achieve all your team's goals because you may not be able to.
That's
pick
right.
The one that matters most. And as I think about it from having been a CEO, most of the time, I would much rather the team overperform and shatter goal number one and underperform the rest by a lot. Then 80% hit all the goals.
110%, right? Yeah. And that is something you could rally those remaining around, get people excited about this new mantra and new mission. And by the way, to your point, Roy, renegotiate the new SLAs with your CEO and with the board. and say, okay, we know what's happened. We know what we're left with. Here's the one thing you can rely on from my team right now. And that's not just true of marketing. It can be across the board. So that's sort of, one thing to do. The other thing, and again, I'm a marketer, so I have a marketing lens on this, but it could be extrapolated.
Yep.
Put new lipstick on the pig, man. Put a new shade of lipstick on the pig, right?
What do you mean?
Go
I've
to
heard the expression, but what do you mean in this context?
Yeah, I mean, so in marketing, they talk about putting lipstick on the pig. A lot of what we do as marketers is shape a story, create a position, create a battle, make an image of a brand, right? And so it could be time to put new lipstick on the pig. And what I mean by that in this context is, can you repurpose stuff? A lot of times what I see, especially in fast growth, high growth marketing teams and technology organizations, you do something and then you're on to the next and the next and the next and the next. Well, when your budget is cut and your resources are slim, why not go back to that white paper that did so well and chunk it up into maybe social media posts or respin it into
it's sort of like if you don't have money to buy new groceries, figure out a way to recook the leftovers.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly right. What else can we do with what's left in the cupboard today, right now? And if you're smart about it and you go back and look at those high performing things, and it could have been a year and a half ago. I'll give you an example. I was working for a company that had, before I got there, they had put together a 13-minute explainer video, which, is nonsense to begin with because no one's going to watch 13 minutes, but it was a brilliant piece, right? It gave the whole story and all of that. We went back during a budget cut time, took that and chunked it into literally 27, that's a real number, mini little snackable nuggets of videos that talked about one little piece to bring people in. And it worked. It was incredible. And by the way, it's a lot cheaper to sit there with some great software and edit little video pieces. I mean, I can even do that. My kids can do that. Then go back and hire a film crew and write a whole new storyline. So that's another great example. Like,
I love that. Sorry, keep going. I mean,
no, that's all. That's what I was going to say on that one.
The thing that also makes me think is that sometimes what ends up happening, and it's a lot to ask for, especially during the morning period, is the cuts end up driving unusual creativity. And the thing, it's like necessity is the mother of invention. Sure, that's great, but it doesn't exactly give you a roadmap for how. But what old components can we remix and reuse is one great starting point for people to have some kind of breakthrough creative moment, I think.
100%. In fact, it reminds me of an old boss I had at Cisco who was phenomenal. And in times like this, she used to say, switch off the Discovery Channel and go back to the History Channel, right? It's a really good time to look at what.
I love that. What a great analog.
Yeah. I stole it from her, right?
Thank
you, Karen Walker, right? But nevertheless, it was super impactful because we're always looking at the future and looking at the Discovery Channel. But, let's take some lessons learned and let's take the things that we know that worked and double down on those.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Okay. The other question that I have is, now let's say the budget's been reduced and times get better.
Well, that's a great question, actually. And what you then do, and I said earlier, renegotiate your SLAs. Part of those SLAs with your CFO, as well as your CEO, is if I deliver, if I exceed, if I can show you that this dollar here leads to that dollar there, when the tide turns, I want the agreement that you'll give me another dollar here.
Oh, I love that.
And that's an easy thing to say yes to because it's a win-win. If I'm not bringing the money in, then I'm not expecting more money in my budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenging dynamics, and I'm curious how you think about this as a, negotiating with executives about this, is as a CEO, I'd always get frustrated when I interview a marketing person or somebody in any role, but in marketing, it seemed to be the norm. And they'd say, well, what's my budget? And it's like, no, I don't, if I tell you what the budget is, you're going to figure out a dumb way to spend it. Yep. But if I say, what are we trying to achieve? And you tell me what it might cost. And so how do you get out of that world where, everything becomes about how much budget can I spend and a budget negotiation? Because I got to the point where I started feeling like people in many groups were proud of how much they could spend.
I know.
It's super fucked up, right? I mean, like, that's not how an organization should work.
That is not how an organization, and in particular marketing, right? I mean, you got to change your ROI and show like, hey, I'm going to go ask you and the board for another buck. I better explain where that buck's going to come out. brand may be the one and only exception. Okay, I get that. Like, right. Okay, fine. But with everything else, you really should have your ROI and metrics, dialed in when you're trying to go do that. It's funny. You made me flash back to one of the best practices I had whenever I was interviewing a final candidate for like a VP director level role. I would always ask them to put together a marketing strategy for some fictitious thing. And the ones that said, what's my budget? I gave them a ding on that one, right? I wanted the people to come back and give me their assumptions, right?
Totally.
Working backwards, right? To your point.
Do you think it's valid for the CEO to be like, no, not
I
getting
think it's
started?
totally valid. I would be
Yeah.
suspect if you gave me a number, to be honest, right? I would
Yeah.
like wonder, like, why is this guy?
Good point. It's like, what's my budget? I don't know, 100.
Right. What does that even mean? And to your earlier point, Roy, it constrains your thinking. Because
Yeah.
then, I mean, if I'm a CEO, I want to see what the best, most brilliant ideas are that you have, and then we'll worry about it.
Totally. No, that's well put. I mean, it then the problem to solve becomes how to spend the budget optimally, as opposed to how to optimize for the return on whatever you
110%.
spend. And so, okay, one more.
Yeah, go.
How does this all come to bear on your current, avocation, if not vocation, of olive oil? And by the way, I was like, I want to go buy some products on that website. I assume that's coming.
It is coming.
Folks want to check it out. So how does that all come to bear on your olive project?
Yeah, no, that's like my kind of side hustle. It was really more my husband's side hustle when he decided to shift his career. And I shifted mine into this, virtual thing. And we make a good team because he understands the whole manufacturing and harvesting and planting and bottling and all that stuff. And I'm the marketer, right? And so, I'm not sure
Who's got the taste buds?
I'll leave that to you. You can report
Okay.
back what you give me. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been able to lean into all of my marketing learnings. And this is actually a really good point that I use when I'm hiring people. I don't necessarily need the person who's got, years of experience in tech or cybersecurity or whatever the thing is. I need a smart marketer. So I've been able to take all of my strategies and apply it to this olive oil thing, which admittedly has zero to do with technology, right? So I'll give you one example. You'll probably laugh. I'll give you two examples. One is out of our first harvest, which was last year, I ran around to all the schmancy restaurants here up in the Napa Valley, the French Laundry and the Solage and all that kind of stuff. And I just said, here's a bottle. I'd love your feedback, right? Just let me know what your feedback is. And I can't tell you how many of them actually said that they wanted to buy, one. And two is I made a list of the top 25 food bloggers and influencers, and I sent them bottles. And a little less than half of them gave me feedback, which is you will see soon on the website, right? Which is great. So I think there's always an opportunity to be creative, be out of the box. I'm not sure how many olive farmers think about running around and dropping off free bottles. Maybe they all do. I don't know. But as a marketer, that's what I did.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any parting thoughts before we wrap?
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to say is, now is a good time to go see your doctor, right? Go get a health check on your tech stack, on how you're investing.
Well, but when budgets get cut, it's actually a great time for maintenance work.
100%. You get cut on your hand to go see a doctor, right? And it's a really good thing because any good agency with its salt will give you a free health check. And you should have your own personal board of directors. I have my little board of, other CMOs that we bounce ideas off of. What am I investing in? What makes sense to you?
That.
Here's my blind spot, right? So
I love that.
Go see the doctor, man. They usually can give you something, right? A Band-Aid or, something.
I love that. Okay. Well, that was fabulous. I really appreciate the concise nuggets, like everything from morning to, putting lipstick on a pig and picking that number one goal. Like all of it is really going to land with me. And if folks want, they'll be able to find this and other episodes that we have on, oops, here we go. I got to put up the URL myself because I deleted it accidentally. But so it goes. This is not advice.work. It's where we have a lot of episodes. And if you're joining us for the first time, the reason we call it This Is Not Advice is because neither of us knows in your setting what you should do. We know what's worked for us. We can share our stories. And then you have to go figure out how to adapt it to your own context, because advice is usually about the giver, not about the receiver. So it's your choice what you want to do once you're, your budget's been reduced and you got to figure out your team goals. And we do these often from questions that come from all of you. So please feel free to keep asking, and you can find us all over the internet. So Karyn, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Would love to have you back.
Love being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.